Madrid, the capital of Spain, a country which takes up 85% of the Iberian Peninsula, lies in the geographical center of the area. The brightest spot of the city is the Retiro Park, ornamented by ponds, fountains, and statues, which provides quiet recreation in the hustle and the bustle of city life. Its beautiful triumphal arch, the Alcalá Gate, was built in 1778 on the occasion of the entry of King Charles III. The 20-meter-high classical work was built in the place of the former triumphal arch, built for Margaret Habsburg and on the grounds of the designs of Ventura Rodriguez. The amount of money needed for the building was ensured, extraordinarily, by surtaxes imposed on wines in the taverns of Madrid. The monument of King Alphonse XI was created by Mariano Benlliure to the order of his son. Apart from him, 4 other architects and sculptors worked on the huge monument whose arched colonnade spectacularly heightens the rider from the green background. The statue is reflected in the water of the big lake that used to be the scene of local water parades, and now it has become the favorite punting lake in Madrid. The park was created by order of Henry IV in the 15th century, but was expanded later by other rulers. Here is where the National Observatory stands, but one can find here a zoo, a chapel, a music pavilion, and an exhibition hall as well. On both sides of the Paseo de los Reyes, white marble statues of Spanish kings fall in line. The Crystal Palace is the most romantic place of the 143 hectares of green land. In front of it, there's a small artificial lake. Next to it, a cave can be found. The building was reconstructed in the late 1800s to make an exhibition hall. Its architect was Ricardo Velázquez Bosco. In the Palacio Cristal, even today, seasonal exhibitions and musical performances are held. At the weekends, the audience is entertained by orchestras in the shade of the trees of the park. During the week, the park is used by roller skaters, walkers, tourists, and local Spanish people who spend their lunchtime here. Retiro Park is close to the Museum Prado, so it's a suitable resting place for visitors who get tired of admiring the wonders of fine art. The Prado is one of the most widely known art galleries of the world. It's a treasury of the artworks of great Spanish painters. The thorough viewing of the materials of all 120 rooms may last many days. The Plaza De Espana is one of the busiest traffic junctions of the city. Here is where the past and the present mingle. The group of statues of Miguel de Cervantes and his two immortal characters recall the 16th century. The skinny figure is Don Quixote. However, he doesn't face windmills, but newly built tower buildings. The Madrid Tower and the Spain building skyscrapers were the first of their kind in the capital city. In the artwork of Cuyo Valera, the immortal writer watches incomprehensively the pace of life in the 21st century. The Royal Palace matches the Prado in the number of visitors. This great residence is the biggest Baroque-style building in Spain. It was built in 1537. However, it's believed by many that there had stood a palace in the place of the early Arabic buildings where the monarchs stayed when they were in Madrid. Remember that the development of this city differs from other big European cities. Madrid was made the capital of all Spain by the decree of Philip II in 1561, and a long time had to pass until it really could measure up to this title. The building was devastated by fire and earthquakes. From contemporary memoirs, we learn that this was not perceived by the people as a tragedy. The royal family did not like the Alcázar very much. The fire that burst out at Christmas came handy for Philip I, and right away he had a new French Baroque-style residency designed by the Italian architect Filippo Jubarà. This is the building that tourists can admire even today. The Sabatini Garden can be found in the north part of the palace. This Versailles-style, 2-hectare park was built in the place of the former royal stables. The shrubs of the park, trimmed to different shapes, form a real labyrinth. On the nearby Plaza de Orient stand the 39 royal statues, all of them twice a man's height, which were originally intended for the balustrade of the palace. The rectangular-shaped 122 by 94 meter Plaza Mayor is typically Spanish in its appearance. It's closed from all directions. It has a uniform facade. It's framed by arcade houses just like the Placa Real in Barcelona. However, as far as its history is concerned, it's typically from the Middle Ages. It was built in the place of a water jump which was running along the city wall, just like the Graben in Vienna. Such a main square can be found in nearly all European cities, which gave place for the open market and for the executions, also for festivals, enthronements and canonizations, occasionally processions and theatrical performances. Such events were held on Plaza Mayor. It was also the place of bullfights. Moreover, there were Sundays when the Holy Inquisition burned a heretic in the morning. In the afternoon, the audience was entertained with a bullfight, and in the evening, a Catholic Mass was celebrated. In the shady balconies of the north side were the boxes of the royal family. The rest of the balconies were hired out by the owners, often for a very high price, just like the balconies in Monaco nowadays during the time of the Formula One race. This is the place where Ignatius of Loyola, Teresa of Avila, Xavier, Francisco were canonized, where Isabella II and her husband were enthroned, and where Marquis Rodrigo Calderón were executed. In every June, the Summer Games commemorate the events of past centuries with theatrical performances, nightly tournaments, and bullfights. A real specialty can also be found in Madrid, which is the Ham Museum. It's not only allowed but obligatory to touch the exhibited items. The Spanish ham, or jamón, differs from other European hams. Its salt content is relatively low. Since the salt isn't flavoring, it's only used for preservation. It's not smoked, but dried this way it becomes intensively succulent. It's aged from 7 to 24 months. The ham, which is aged for a shorter period, has more moisture and is juicier. If it's aged longer, then it becomes drier, with more concentrated flavors. One can see hams hanging down from the ceilings of catering establishments. One example is the cellar restaurant Maison de Corregidor, where the guests are pampered with real tapas. Although people lived on the plateau of Meseta in the prehistoric age, real settlements were developed during the Arab rule. The area of Medina in the 9th century did not exceed 30 hectares. Arabs, Christians, and Jewish people lived together in the town. After a number of peaceful decades, the Spanish first wanted to invade the settlement in 932. We still do not know the exact date of the invasion. After the Arabs left, many centuries had passed until the little settlement became the capital city. Philip II had his way with fire and sword. He built the Palacio Real and the Escorial. Since then, Madrid has grown bigger and nicer, and now it matches cities with greater histories. The biggest bullfight arena of the country, the Plaza de Toros Monumental, can be found in Madrid. The establishment was built in 1929, in Neo-Mudéjar style, and it can hold 25,000 people. Behind the arena, a bullfight museum can be found, and in the nearby restaurants, one can often find bull meat on the tables. The novilladas, in which bulls that are defective for official bullfights fight the matador, usually start in the middle of March, and there's one every Sunday, and usually every Thursday until Easter, when the major fights or corrido de toros start. After Easter, in Madrid, starts the first subscription season of the 7 bullfights. Books of tickets for all 7 fights are sold, and the best seats are always booked year in and year out. The best of all seats are the barreras in the middle of the shade where the bullfighters put their capes over the red wooden barrier. There is where they stand when they're not in the ring. It's there that they have the bull brought when they're going out with the muleta, and it's there that they come to sponge off after the killing. A seat there is equivalent in what you see and hear to being in the corner box during a fight, or to sitting in the dugout or on the bench in a baseball or football game. The really brave bull welcomes the fight, accepts every invitation to fight, but does not fight because he is cornered, but because he wants to, and this bravery is measured and can only be measured by the number of times he freely and willingly, without pawing, threatening or bluffing, accepts combat with the picador, and whether, when the steel point of the pike is sunk into the muscles of his neck or shoulder, he insists under the iron and continues his charge after he begins to really receive punishment until man and horse are thrown. A brave bull is one that without any hesitation and in approximately the same part of the ring will charge the picadors 4 times, paying no attention to the punishment he receives, and each time charging with the steel in him until he has reversed the rider and horse, writes Hemingway in his Death in the Afternoon. Heads up, swinging with the music, their right arms swinging free, they stepped out, crossing the sanded arena under the arc lights, the quadrillas opening up behind, the picadors riding after. Behind came the bullring servants and the jingling mules. The crowd applauded Hernandez as they marched across the arena. Arrogant, swinging, they looked straight ahead as they marched. Manuel, leaning against the barrera, watching the bull. The bull, at full gallop, pivoted and charged the cape, his head down, his tail rising. Perhaps Hemingway was the only non-Spanish expert and fan of this sport, which isn't considered to be a sport by many apart from Hispanic people. However, the curiosity of the hypocritical tourists who condemn the fight but at the same time buy the expensive tickets contributes to the survival of the bullfights beyond the enthusiasm of the local people. The busy square of Plaza De Colon was named after the great discoverer, whose memorial column stands in the middle of the square. The 3-meter-high Columbus statue on top of the Gothic column was made by Jerónimo Signol. The embossments depict Queen Isabella and the 3 ships of the fleet. The huge building of the National Library comprises the archives and the Archaeological Museum. A well-known spectacle is the reproduction of the Altamira cave. In the nearby streets, the statue of 3 great Spanish painters, Velázquez, Murillo, and Goya, can be seen. The artworks of these 3 masters, their contemporaries, their ideals, and their followers constitute the majority of the pictures that can be seen in the Prado. Let us salute them and devote a day to view these imperishable values of fine art. Although numerous Spanish artworks can be found in the great galleries all over the world, and from time to time traveling exhibitions are organized, nowhere else can these great artworks be seen in such completeness. Not to mention the happiness when we discover the palaces and buildings of Madrid, which can often be found in the background of these pictures. The world-famous Residency of Philip II was built in the village of San Lorenzo in El Escorial, situated 1,000 meters above sea level. The sickly, short, rigorous and bigoted religious king wanted to break away from Madrid, the air of which was bad for his health. He longed for the simple life and solitude. This demand was materialized in this simply formed group of buildings with noble delineation, but without any splendor. The first plans were drawn by the Renaissance architect and great craftsman Juan Bautista de Toledo, who spent the greater part of his career in Rome working with Michelangelo. Following the death of his master in 1561, the work was carried on by Juan de Herrera. The building, not altogether incidentally, is known to be built in Herrera style. The sides of the monumental square-based building are more than 200 meters. It comprises 2 palaces, a basilica, a library, a pantheon, and a museum, together with 3 patios or inner courts, not repudiating its Spanish character. It takes at least a day to explore all the treasure of the Escorial. One must definitely see the Bourbon Palace, the Habsburg Palace, which was the residency of Philip II, and the War Room. Beautiful frescoes line the walls of the 55-meter room, depicting the defeat of the Sultan of Granada. The most valuable treasure of the basilica is Cellini's crucifix. The Pantheon is the resting place of many kings. However, their wives were only buried here if they gave birth to a son who could be heir to the throne. If they failed to do this, they were buried in the infants' pantheon. The Valley of the Fallen is only a few kilometers from the Escorial. The monumental group of buildings in the 1,400-hectare woodland was intended by the dictator General Franco to be the symbol of national atonement. The basilica and the cross above it stand as a memorial to the 1 million victims of the Spanish Civil War. The basilica under the ground is 262 meters long. 400,000 tons of stone was moved during the construction. The 12-meter Pieta over the main entrance is the work of the famous Spanish painter Juan de Avalos. The sculptures of the Great Cross over the basilica were also made by him. The 150-meter cross stands on a 150-meter hill. One can imagine the view that may be enjoyed after traveling up there by the incline railway. The wild coast, or Costa Brava, is the seacoast of Catalonia. The blue bay is bordered by little white houses on the hill behind the ruins of a former fortress, and the city wall can be seen. Cadaqués was nothing more than a small fishing village for many centuries. In 1543, the settlement was burned by pirates. The majority of the population were killed. Later, they successfully fought back such attacks. Under the lead of Salvador Dali, they resisted the quantity tourism that General Franco wanted to introduce. They did not let their houses to be destroyed to give place to colossal cement buildings. There are very few settlements on Costa Brava which could preserve its original buildings and atmosphere. It's because of its untouched character why a painting school was established here, which is hallmarked by the names of Dali, Picasso, Matisse, and Eluard. Garcia Lorca and Garcia Marquez, the two greatest figures of Spanish literature, also lived here. There are 3 museums in the town. In one of them there is a photo exhibition of Dali. In the other, there are paintings of artists who lived and worked in Cadaqués. The third one is the Perot Moore Museum, one of the most significant private collections of Europe, where not only Spanish, but Flemish and French artworks are also exhibited. The statue of Dali stands on the promenade, in front of the popular hotel of the town. Should you want to see Dali's old house, you don't have to go that far. It's in the nearby Port Yugat Bay, where the painter lived with his wife Gala. Directly on the seacoast, there's the ornamented building in which Picasso lived. Visitors may not see the inside, but on the wall there's a plaque as a memorial for the artist who spent a year here in 1910. The artist, who was born in Malaga, traveled all over southern Europe, but lived most of his life in Paris. The versatile Dali set up his museum in Figueras, his birthplace, and gave it the name Teatro Museo Dali. Indeed, it's more than an exhibition of paintings. The shocking, surreal artworks impress hundreds of thousands of visitors every year. This is where the master himself is buried, under one of the unmarked stones of the deck, while his wax figure is carried to the big exhibitions in a glass coffin. He was an artist with exceptional talents. In his life and in his work, sexuality had a special place. Nevertheless, he loved his wife passionately until the end of his life. Every good painter, if he's really determined to create a great artwork, should first marry my wife. Gala can heal the spirit of a man and respects paintings even more than the painter, he wrote about his wife. Besides his 1,500 paintings, Dali made numerous books, illustrations, and dozens of sculptures. It's known by few people that he was the one who made the logo of the Chupa Chups lollipop and the scenery for the Hitchcock movie Spellbound. Together with Louis Buñuel, they made one of the imperishable works of film art, the surreal Andalusian dog, and he also made cartoons for Walt Disney. In America, he was called Mr. Surrealism. He also has museums in California and Florida. Girona is the seat of the province. The charter flights of the visitors coming to Costa Brava arrive to its airport. The zigzag old town, built on the bank of the Rio Onyar, is one of the most beautiful towns of the country. It offers great possibilities for excursions as an alternative to the beach. Saint Feliu, or Saint Felix, who the town got its name after, was the bishop of Girona. The three-aisle Gothic church at the foot of the cathedral was also named after him. The Girona Cathedral stands out even among the many great religious Spanish buildings. The monumental staircase leads up to the main gate. Many parts of the original Roman building were preserved. The scenic ambulatory is particularly interesting. The invaluable tapestry depicting the story of Adam and Eve in 30 scenes is exhibited in the treasury. Costa de Mar, although its location makes it very similar to other resort towns of Costa Brava, is more beautiful than any of them. The old part of the town was built on the south hill that seals the bay. In its houses, there are small terraced restaurants with lively atmosphere. The cobblestone alleys crawling up the hill are worth climbing for the magnificent view. From here, we can look back to the colorful beach abound with tourists. If we go further up until the lighthouse, we can look back to the open water and the romantic cliffs. The salty vapor of the sea mingles with the scent of the sun-kissed evergreens. Above us, squawking seagulls in the cloudless sky. It's the embodiment of a Mediterranean dream. The best-known resort town of the area is Lloret de Mar, which is hardly more than a single enormous beach. The beach of Lloret, like the other beaches of the Catalan coast, is an arc covered with sand and bordered by huge cliffs at the end. The castle palace of Sa Caleta stands on the north cliff. The walls that look archaic, crenellated tower with loopholes. It was built in 1929 to the order of a wealthy businessman for his own gratification. The Costa Brava first catches the visitor's eye from a steep mountain path. The sun is blazing down. The silhouette of the destination can be seen through the trembling air. The 1,000-year-old ruins that are difficult to tell from the barren cliffs, scorched grey and brown under the sun. Nothing else, just the chirping of crickets can be heard. People's first instinct is to turn back, checking the distance completed. There's nothing that sets limits to the glance. They sweep their eyes on the arch-shaped bay below and the advertisement-like white houses of the fishing village. Then the glance is set on the hillside, which, like curtains in a theatre, hides the scene behind the coming curve. There, in the distance, where the blue of the sky dims into the east, where the border between height and depth is blurred, perhaps there is the mysterious path that attracts all, this infinite beauty, which is virtually nothing more than indescribable kitsch. What is here that captures people? Is it the Costa Brava itself? So Norbert Lewandowski ponders in his writing. A small 15th century parish church stands on the Plaza de la Iglesia. Its colorful tiles and golden mosaics have been recently redecorated. It's named Sant Roman, and it's the only old ecclesiastical building of the area, apart from the Ermita Santa Cristina. Nearby there's the old town hall and the local history museum. The streets of Lloret, behind the promenade, are crowded with tourists from spring until autumn. Life is always busy here. It's one of the disco centers of Europe. It's a great opportunity to experience the Mediterranean nightlife. Perhaps the sangria is the most widely known Spanish drink. It's great refreshment when the weather is hot. It's a fruit punch made from red wine, grape juice, and orange juice, served with lemon and orange slices, grapes, and ice cubes. At every step, it's sold bottled in the streets. The scent of sun oil lingers with the vapor of the sea. Sounds of the enjoyment of life float in the air. Squeals provoked by the waves of the sea can be heard. Vital sun rays, pleasant icy drinks. It feels good to remember these pictures. On the south hill, there's a statue of a woman, looking in the distance. She's rarely alone. The most well-known site of Barcelona is the Sagrada Familia Cathedral, that has been built since 1882, but is still unfinished. This masterpiece of the Catalan secession attracts masses of tourists into the city. Gaudi, with apostolic permission, was taken to final resting place here, in his main work of art after his death in 1926. His artwork has not been completed because there were no architects who would undertake the execution. Therefore, the designs had to be changed to be suitable for using reinforced concrete. The building, following the wish of Gaudi, is financed by private donations so that the church could not interfere with the designs. The tower, which has been under construction even today, is going to be 170 meters high. Sagrada Familia is the church of the future as much as organic architecture is of the future too. Gaudi said that if the world opens up its astral curve, the world can sense the forms of paradise. Gaudi was hit by a tram. César Manrique died in a car accident, while Hunduduasar got a fatal heart attack on an ocean liner. Will there be an architect who preserves their heritage and carries on their ideas? Although the master built several residential buildings in the Catalan capital, the most well-known among them are the Casa Batillo and the Casa Mila, only 2 corners away from each other on Paseo Gracia Boulevard. Both houses are pure playfulness and fantasy. Gruel Park is part of the artworks created from the synthesis of secession and organic architecture, of which undulating terrace held by monumental portico was designed by Gaudi. The mosaic statue of the gargoyle iguana is set here and depicted on almost all the Barcelona souvenirs. The former house of the artist can also be found in the park. The red brick triumphal arch, which was originally the entrance of the World Exhibition in 1888, lies in front of Ciudadela Park, which includes the zoo as well. The artwork of Josep Vilaseca is decorated with the Catalan coat of arms and winged human figures. The medieval Cathedral of Barcelona, Santa Eulalia, lies in the Gothic district. The ecclesiastical building with its 5 towers is closely surrounded by medieval houses. Only its facade faces the spacious Plaza de Seu. Although the cathedral has been being redecorated for years, it's open for visitors. The inside of the church is amazing. It's 82 meters long, the height of its dome is 42 meters. Moreover, it has 28 chapels. The Christ statue that was the prow ornamentation of Don Juan de Austria's winning boat in the Lepanto battle stands in the Holy Eucharist Chapel. The sarcophagus of the name-giving Saint Eulalia alabaster stands in the middle of a separate crypt. The martyr has become the patron saint of the city. The ambulatory of the church can be reached through an engraved gate from the 11th century. A little fountain babbles in the middle of the monastery garden. The yard is planted with magnolia trees and palms. Long times ago, a Roman, then an Arabic settlement was situated in the place of the Gothic district of Barcelona. Then it was followed by the city centre, built in the time of the Catholic kings. The royal palace, the governor's palace, the old house of charity, the city hall, several ecclesiastical buildings, and the National Museum of Catalan Art. The cathedral is surrounded with all of these buildings, and together they form the united Gothic-style district. The Spanish have always highly esteemed their famous ancestors. The museum of the native of Malaga, Pablo Picasso, was furnished in an old arched palace of the town. In Barcelona, the exhibition of the founder of Surrealism, Salvador Dali, is only a few steps away from this place. Hundreds of pigeons paddle on the huge square of Plaza de Catalunya, framed by fountains, as well as on St. Mark's Square in Venice. This is one of the busiest junctions of the city, the departure place of Rambla. Moreover, this is the terminal of sightseeing buses too. It's framed by modern office buildings and stores. You can find the Rambla in every Spanish town, even in Latin America. Actually, it functions as a main square or marketplace, so this is the center of the hustle and bustle of everyday life. Its form resembles to a long street rather than a square. The Rambla in Barcelona, which is called the Rambla of Flowers, is extremely beautiful and lively. Its atmosphere is created by the little stalls of newsagents, florists, and pet traders, as well as by performers dressed as statues. Some of them have a really artistic performance. The Rambla has existed in its present form since 1860. However, its history goes back to 2,000 years. The name was given by the cartographers of Julius Caesar, who called the area along the Roman city wall Rambla. Mercado de San José is the gut of the city. The iron-structured market hall was built in the time of Eiffel by Josep Frontseré, when steel was preferred instead of traditional building materials all over Europe. In the market hall, fish traders, butchers, bakers and greengrocers offer their unique, beautiful goods. The Rambla would not be complete without the portrait drawers and caricaturists. The Teatro Principal was built by the order of Philip II, who mercifully allowed the Holy Cross Hospital to entertain the patients with performances. The Museo de Cera is a selection of waxworks. The Placa Real is framed by three-floor houses with arcade and facade of the same kind. Fountains, statues and palm trees create a very good atmosphere on the square, as well as Gaudi's lamps from the artist's childhood. The square was created on the place of former ecclesiastical buildings in Francesco Molina's dreams in 1848. At those revolutionary times, it was named after Garibaldi. The Columbus column has become a symbol of Barcelona. The nearly 70-meter-high artwork was designed by Gaudí and Dali. There is a fast elevator in the column that takes people to the bottom of the statue. Inside the globe, from where there is an amazing view to the port, the Rambla, and Montjuic Hill. The secessionist building of the Customs House greets travelers at the gate of the decorated port. The new port with its modern store resembles mainly an airport. The 213-meter-high Montjuic Hill can be reached by car, bus, or cable train, where among many other sights we can admire the Museum of Catalan Arts. The cable train leading up from the port offers a fascinating panorama during the ride too. Costa del Sol, the sunny coast, together with Andalusia, with its great history, are the most characteristic Spanish scenery of the Iberian Peninsula. The coast of the Mediterranean Sea, from Almeria to Algeciras, is one 300-kilometer-long beach. Nowadays, due to the migration from the middle and northern part of Europe, masses of people have been flocking to the sunlit beach resort year-round. The capital of Costa del Sol, Malaga, was built in the middle of the coast. The settlement, with its more than 500,000 residents, is not only the biggest, but one of the most beautiful cities of the area. There's a subtropical garden lying between the old town and the port. The handsome cabs depart for their sightseeing tour from under the palm trees on the path. Pigeons, which Picasso, the great son of the city, depicted with such fondness in his pictures, still paddle on the quiet square of Plaza de la Merced, framed by old houses. The Painter's Museum can be visited in the former Buena Vista Palace. From the medieval citadel, the Gibralfaro, one can have an overall look at the town, embracing some sights and the modern Malaga, stretching out over the distance. The lower castle of Gibralfaro is called Alcabasa. This masterpiece of Spanish-Arabic architecture was originally built as protection against pirates in 1040. Later, it was broadened by quadrangular towers and gave place to royal residences. In its heyday, it had 110 towers, more spas and mosques. Tourists are attracted by its intimate inner yard, surrounded by high walls, fountains, rich flora in the garden, and a fascinating view to the old city. The cathedral in Malaga is called La Manquita, that is, one-armed by most people, as one of its towers has never been completed. Anyhow, the monumental building was built for 250 years. The three-naved cross-vaulting cathedral is thought to be a masterpiece of the Spanish Renaissance. However, it's strange that Baroque and classical characteristic features can be found on the outside of the building. The embossments above the door depict the two patron saints of the town. The walls of the hall rest on huge Corinthian columns, and the best Spanish artists worked on the inner side. The new path of Torremolinos truly runs along the beach. Sometimes Bowers casts some shadow, but its main role prevails only in the evening saunter. The recently built yacht port of Benalmádena is a real gem. Its architects strove for the synthesis of Spanish-like Mediterranean architecture and the Arabic Moor heritage into which capriciously zigzagging lagoons and bridges over them steal some kind of Venetian flavor. It's a true fairyland that is worth a visit even if we're not so interested in shipping. The marvelous town of Mijas clambers up a 430-meter-high hill in the name-giving valley only 8 kilometers away from the beaches of Fuengirola. The settlement, with a population of 6,000 people, has an amphitheater-like view of Costa del Sol. The shop window of Andalusia, as it's called here, can be reached by burro taxi, that is, a saddled donkey. However, those reluctant to do so can set off among the terraced whitewashed row houses. The main square is the Plaza De La Constitution, that is framed by houses with decorative wrought iron grids, bars, and flower ornaments. The town hall, as well as the La Muralla church, is situated here. The only square-based bullfighting arena was built at the highest point of the Mijas. 20 beaches line along the coast of Marbella through 20 kilometers. The ancient fishing village was famous for its iron, lead, and graphite mines in the 19th century. Today, it has a gold mine that is called tourism. The old town lies in the shadow of the former Arabic fortress. The center of town is surrounded by walls leading up to the castle, and there are still 2 watchtowers with crenellated gables. Passenger traffic has been banned from narrow streets. There's no room for them anyway. One can imagine how hot it could be in summer months if shielding canvases are stretched out over roads and squares. The town hall stands on an intimate square overgrown by orange trees. The whole square is a terrace of restaurants framing the square. One of them has been entertaining guests for 500 years. Only those having visited the modern district, as well as the old town, know Marbella well. The port is a unique world, the citadel of luxury and elegance that is Spain, shows a colorful, widescreen, three-dimensional picture of how the beautiful and the wealthy spend their holiday. One can be easily convinced of the high standard of the promenade near the beach where Rolls-Royces, Ferraris, Porsches, Jaguars, and Harley-Davidson bikes touch each other. Ronda is one of the most exciting, scenic, and wild romantic places in Spain. As far as the eye can see, this region looks as a stage design of a romantic play, says Hemingway, who, of course, arrived to see the local bullfighting. Ronda can take pride in having the oldest bullfighting arena of the country, which is, of course, very famous. The streets bear the reminiscences of both Muslim and Christian past. The terrace of Alemanda Square has an amazing view of the scene, as well as of Pico de San Cristobal mountain chain, which towers over the lowlands below. This area used to be the land of highwaymen long ago, whose figure is girdled by old romantic times. The old and new town, built on rocks, are linked by a 60-meter-long bridge that is the most well-known sight of the city. Under the bridge flows the wild Guadalquivir River with a depth of 160 meters. The luxury restaurant under the bridge used to be a prison. Antequera, which lies between Malaga and Córdoba, attracts us with its monumental buildings. 25 churches and monasteries can be found here. Even today, monks and nuns live in them, isolated from everyday life. The biggest part of the 1,000-year-old town was built on a fertile plain, but the old town is undulating, with a lot of terraces. From the terrace in front of the Iglesia del Carmen, there is a beautiful view to the Gate of Giants and Lovers' Rock. The latter commemorates the Romeo and Juliet-like story of a Christian youth and a wealthy Moorish girl. If you haven't seen Granada, you haven't seen anything, the saying goes. The city, with the snow-capped 3,500-meter-high Sierra Nevada in the background, is truly amazing. However, the main reason why tourists visit this place year by year is Alhambra, the jewel built of stone. The architects made the dreams of the Arabian Nights come true in this group of buildings, everything that can be fancied by the imaginative people of the Orient in pomp, luxury, and beauty. The buildings and the gardens are in perfect harmony with each other and with the landscape. In the age of the Moor, the Alhambra functioned as a place and a barrack for soldiers. It was made a complete royal city by mosques, minarets, baths, cemeteries, and stables. Only the royal residences were preserved for the present. Even these are different from palaces meant by Western terminology. They have no unified facade, shaft, symmetry. The array of 1 or 2 floor set of rooms around the inner courtyard is connected by a complex system of corridors. The stalactite vault of Sala de los Hermanas is comprised of 5,000 small box-like cells. Its walls are ornamented by quotations from the Koran. The buildings around the court of the lions were the accommodation for the wives, children, and odalisques. The architects exploited the panoramic view in their design, as well as the plants in the water that may be seen from the arched windows. The inner courts are ornamented with fountains, lakes, pools, water jets, nicely trimmed shrubs, avenues, and palm trees. Granada, among many other spectacles, the famous cathedral must be seen, which was made by the same artists who were the makers of the Malaga Cathedral. The sepulchre of Catholic Isabella and Ferdinand makes a lasting impression on the spectator. The artwork, made of Carrara marble, looks as if it was a white wedding bed with a couple lying on it. The line of houses in Nerja Group around the estuary of the River Chiar on the coast. The arched streets of the town, framed by sun-kissed houses, lead up to the lovely stone surface of the plateau. This is the Balcon De Europa, one of the most beautiful scenic lookouts of Costa del Sol. Spain is not only famous for its beaches, but also for the beautiful thoroughbred horses, the horse-breeding tradition of horse schools, which is partly the heritage of the Arabs. A Spanish horse school is a special spectacle. One must not miss out on this experience. The Andalusian capital is located far from the seacoast nowadays. It lies on a fertile plain which used to be a sea bay. Along the city runs the Guadalquivir, the most important waterway of the country that gives Seville a port town atmosphere. The magnificent cathedral was built in the place of the Moorish mosque, and it incorporated the Giralda Tower, which became the symbol and the most beautiful lookout tower of the city. The Catedral y la Giralda is also famous for allegedly safeguarding the ashes of Columbus, which were transported here from the Havana Cathedral after the separation of Cuba. By all accounts, not only the life of the discoverer, but his death and the vicissitudes of his remains would also fill a book. We can discover the old town on foot or by hansom cab departing from the cathedral. The cityscape of Sevilla was developed in the Middle Ages. It's a web of zigzagging streets, dotted with small squares which sometimes don't even have names. A few magnolias and palm trees are there to give some shade. Women chatting by statues and fountains, children playing, windows all around with flowers, roofs, and with wave tiles. Through the open entrances, we may glance at the courts or patios of the buildings. Flowers, rich tile decorations, delicate wrought iron gates everywhere. Orange and lemon trees, the torrents and the scent of flowers. 700 years have passed since the time of the Arabs, but the surroundings tell tales about them even today, in the flowers, the stones, the local customs, the softly formed words. Groceries and small stores in the streets does not seem like a big city at all. No noise of tram or bus can be heard. With this method of construction, the Arabs managed to preserve the charm of Seville for hundreds of years. In the narrow streets, there are memorial plaques by step with the names of writers, poets, and painters who were born, lived, or died here in the old town with a unique atmosphere, the Santa Cruz district. This is a small area with only a few streets and squares, but it's the cherished treasure of the city. The Alcazar, the former royal palace, is a rustic building with plain stone walls, typical gable ornaments, and towers. Like Moorish buildings in general, it's a castle and also a palace. Only the outside towers, the walls, and the lion gate were preserved in their original states. The inside was completely rebuilt. In the Admiral Room, many important decisions were made concerning the future of America. This is where Columbus set off on his second voyage, and this is where he was greeted by Queen Isabel when he returned. This is where the organization was founded that controlled the trade with the newly discovered countries. This is where Magalhães and Balboa were sent from their original colonial journeys. The rich history of the city started before Christ. The settlement that was established by the Iberians was invaded by the Phoenicians. Later, it became a Roman town. Two Roman emperors, Trajan and Hadrian, were born nearby. After the fall of the empire, it became the capital of the West Gothic kingdom. Between the 8th and the 13th centuries, it was ruled by the Moors. After the Reconquest, it was made the seat of Castilian kings. Since the Middle Ages, the idea of honor was highly esteemed. The Spanish did not conceal their admiration for their Moor opponents. One way of expressing this admiration was the Mudéjar style, in which all the traits of Oriental architecture were mixed with their own art trends. The Spanish king, Peter the Cruel, had the damaged Alcázar in Seville rebuilt in this style. The Avenida de José Antonio is the beautiful avenue of Seville. This is where the city hall stands. In front of it, there's the equestrian statue of King San Fernando. And this is where you can start walking on the Caye De Las Sierpes. This is the busiest shopping street of the city. On the way, we pass 18 churches and 5 palaces. All of them have their own history, but even more interesting than that is the atmosphere of the city itself. The windows of the shops are full of mantillas. These lacy clothes with pleated skirt are the indispensable costumes of the flamenco dance. What does flamenco express? Love and death, just like everything else in Spain if you look under the surface. The flamenco demonstrates love in 3 stages: courting, desire, and pleasure. However, in the background there's always death, grinning. In the accompanying music, some kind of Oriental Arab pain can be discovered that resembles the Portugal fado. Is flamenco of Arab, Portuguese, or Spanish origin? It hasn't been decided for centuries. Let's not spend time with wondering, we should only enjoy. Mallorca is the biggest of the Balear Islands, welcoming the visitors with historical and cultural monuments, excellent beaches, a pleasant weather, and a wide range of programs. Many say that the capital of the island, Palma De Mallorca, is the most beautiful city of the Mediterranean. James I also held this opinion, even before seeing the famous cathedral, which was built by his order according to the plans of Guillem Sagrera. The last stone was placed 130 years after the death of the architect, but was modified during the coming centuries. Even Antonio Gaudi added his own ideas to the building. His modern, somewhat bizarre vision was embodied in the wrought iron canopy, ornamented by lamps, tapestries, and colorful crucifixes. The old town isn't particularly big, but it has a very good atmosphere. The incense-scented, decorated churches, the graceful medieval noble palaces, and the glorious public buildings are all proofs of the old wealth of Palma. The buildings with enormous wooden gates and dark walls face inside. There's no need for the passers-by to see the richness of the interior. The shady squares radiate with the enjoyment of life. Some of these are quite small, like the Plaça Mercat or the Plaça Weiler, and there are huge ones among them also, like the Plaça Mayor and the Plaça Court, but all of them are equally friendly. The Spanish squares may be called plaza or placa, depending on which province they are in. The Catalans pronounce it Plaka, and Mallorca is a Catalan island to the core. The people are proud of their origin, their language, and their newly achieved autonomy. So do not be surprised if the beach there isn't pronounced playa, but Platya. The rocky east coast is dotted by idyllic little bays. The holiday resorts here are the most cheerful settlements of the island. An old fortress with towers and loopholes rises above these settlements. Looking back from here, the port of the capital can be seen. The crowd-attracting Playa De Palma was built near the capital. The 8-kilometer-long sandy beach is divided into 16 sections. The avenue, with its decorative pavement and palm trees, is used by walkers, bike riders, small trains, and hansom cabs. The hotels of this street can host some 40,000 visitors. The huge German-style pubs, the noisy discos, and the crowds streaming down the street may scare off many people. However, it must be said in the protection of Mallorca that it intends to please everybody. There are numerous quiet, pine-scented little bays with birdsong for people who would like to avoid the crowd. The Cala d'Or is proud of its half-dozen beautiful beaches, while Porto has preserved its traditional characteristics. An interesting speciality of the place can be noticed: the boat garage, with 2-winged green doors that open to the water. Porto Colombe, just like a dozen other towns, proudly claims to be the birthplace of Christopher Columbus. The waves crash against beautiful shapes of rocks, enormous arches on the coast. Here we can see the forerunners of geological formations that created the caves of the area. It's not easy to sail along the heavily structured, scalloped coast, but beyond doubt it's very romantic. There are many intimate little bays that cannot be accessed from the continent. The Kovas Del Dreck, in which an orchestra plays on a boat floating under the artfully lit dripstones, is the biggest cave lake in the world. The most beautiful road of the island runs between the coast and the mountain of Serra de Llevant. It serpentines along vineyards, almond trees, orange and olive groves, opening up an unforgettable view to the numerous little sea bays. Bigger cruise ships can only be found in Palma and in the big tourist centers, but if someone would like to explore the small bays along the coast, it's always possible to bargain with a local boatman. The charming natural beauties of Mallorca are mentioned often by many. To prove these claims true, one should drive down the road from Andretix to the Formentor Cape through Banyalbufar and Sa Calobra, which is one of the dream routes of Europe. Banyalbufar, a settlement with 1,000 residents, is perhaps the most beautiful fishing village of the island. Wonderful cliffs rise from the rich tropical plants and evergreens, and colorful blooming shrubs cover the hillsides. The houses that are built on the hillside are somewhat different, and still, all of them are the same. The word Mallorca can be detected in the name of Mallorca, and by no coincidence, since this island was the birthplace of these enameled potteries. Valdemosa, the Wild Coast, was built 420 meters above sea level. It's a favorite destination of the Costa Brava in Mallorca. The most popular site of the town is the Carthouse Monastery, built in the 14th century. This is where the seriously ill Chopin lived in 1838. Solar, situated in the middle of the Orange Valley with a mild climate, may indicate the word gold. No doubt it's one of the most interesting places of Mallorca, owing both to its beautiful location and its San Francisco-style nostalgic tram. The urban line is quite an anachronistic scene as it trundles along the beach with palm trees, especially in that it leaves from the downtown area, from between the town hall and the San Bartolomeo Church, crosses the main square, and at the same time crosses the terrace of a large coffee house. Its route continues among orange groves and small gardens until it reaches the coast and the curve of the long bay. There's a scenic view from almost all parts of the bay. However, many people go to the lighthouse, from where the angry waves of the open sea can be seen. Everything is like the most beautiful postcards. A guidebook to Mallorca says, "Wild cicada cries, scent of pine trees, glittering sunshine, wild cliffs rising to the sun, down under the turquoise bay and the white of the sun among the green pines, a pair of eagles circling around the hill." The coastal line of the Mediterranean is abundant in beautiful beaches. All of them have something that people may love, but there are a few which are as special as Sa Calobra. The impressive, rocky Cirque resembles an enormous stadium. There's a shingly beach created by the wash of a wild creek. We can experience the most interesting swimming experience of our lives, but in peak season we may have to share the place with a few hundred other people. To the west, the sandy gravel is banked up and gives place to waving sand dunes. It may be surprising what a rich flora these dunes have. Besides the modest little bushes, very special white flowers may be found. Apartment houses were built on the side of man-made lagoons. They are accessible by car or by boat. They are called, what else could they be, Apartment Venezia. The ruins of the old town wall still stand in the center of Alcudia, together with the houses and churches that have been built over the centuries. This neighborhood is particularly liked by the British tourists. This might also have been true a few decades ago, when Agatha Christie and her husband, the archaeologist Max Mallowan, spent their holiday here. The crime story Polenta Bay captures the memories of the place and the holiday. From Alcudia, it's worth taking an excursion to the Balenza Bay, where lovers of extreme sports may follow their craze, kiting, which is the mixture of paragliding and windsurfing. Ibiza was named the Isle of Pines by the Greeks. In the Roman age, it was called Eleusis. It's the island of peace and evergreens, where we may find tranquility in the hot tropical sunshine. Ibiza is only a 572 square kilometer little spot on the map, but it's an exceptional place for relaxation and recreation. The salty vapor of the sea mingles wonderfully with the scent of pines, olives, almonds, and figs. The coast of the island is 170 meters long, and it's abundant in areas still untouched by human hand. 17 protected natural habitats are registered, the total area of which exceeds 40% of the area of the island. Due to its balanced climate and favorable location, Ibiza became a significant resort center of the Mediterranean. Ibiza is the capital of the island, situated in the southeast, with a population of 32,000. Its location and monument buildings make it one of the most intimate towns of the Mediterranean. From the large port, ships head towards the mainland and the other islands of Balear, Mallorca, Formentera, and Menorca. The town can be divided into two areas: the lower town, which consists of the port, La Marina, and the scenic Sapenya, and the upper town, which is called Dalt Vila. The Passeig Vara de Rey is the heart of the town. It got its name after the general who died a martyr in the Spanish-American War for the independence of Cuba. The general also got a monument in 1904. Two famous sights of the town are the dry well, decorated by 5 wrought iron lamps, and the obelisk of the pirates. We know that this is the only monument in the world that was put up to pirates. But what had they done to earn this honor? The Sapenya is a controversial part of the town. It's scenic, but very poor. The whitewashed houses, the angled stairs of the narrow streets inspire photographers and painters. Almost all houses have something interesting to show. Many fishermen still live here with their families, the clothes drying on ropes, children playing on the cobblestones, careless cats sunbathing, lend a true beach atmosphere to the town of Sapenya. Not to mention the scent of the fish and the meal in the making in kitchens. The gate of the upper town, Dalt Vila, was built in 1583 under the rule of Philip II. There's now a bridge built of stone where there used to be a drawbridge. This part of town, surrounded by a 22-meter-high stone wall, is connected to the lower part of the town by 3 passageways. The steep and narrow cobblestone alleys evoke times gone by. Along the castle wall, steep stairs lead up to the towers in the castle, from where we may glance down at the town lying below and the crystal-clean sea. On the other side of the tower, there's a line of picturesque white houses. The church, built of yellow sun-worn stones, has been looking over the town of Dalt Villa for centuries. The slides at the Aquamar Park offer good amusement for both children and adults. We continue our journey on the southern coast of the town, the famous Playa del Bos promenade surrounded by palm trees, with an abundance of shops and restaurants which will keep the visitor entertained. This shallow water beach, covered by fine sand, is the largest on the island. It's several kilometers long. The open market of Hippie is held on every Wednesday, on the area of Punto Arabi, which is to the north of Santa Eulalia. In the 60s, the islands of Crete and Ibiza were a refuge for the hippies, longing for freedom. Some of them settled in these places permanently. These hippies, who may have grown somewhat older but not more serious, sell their handmade souvenir products on this market. For those visitors who remember life in the 60s, this experience is like time travel. The beautiful bay of Cal de Serra can be found 3 kilometers from Portinatix. It's abundant in both rocky and sandy beaches. The rocky parts have many surprises in store for divers, fishers, and hikers. There are many small bays hidden among the cliffs of the coast. The famous bays and beaches of the island can be found to the south of Sant Antonio. Enthusiastic people may argue whether the Bassa, the Conte, or the Vadilla Bay is the best on the island. The truth is that all of them have something special to offer. The lengthy Calabassa is one of the most popular with its shallow, sandy beach. Calaconta, with gravel and sand with its shallow water, is very popular with small children. Some tourists with artistic aspirations carved embossments into the steep sandy wall of the bay, which evoke the portraits of American presidents in Mount Rushmore. On Ibiza, the day and the night are both unforgettable. While the sun is shining, the sea and the pools attract people. When night falls, the restaurants, the world-famous pleasure grounds, the discos, are crowded with young people and with people who would like to feel young. There are separate disco buses so that nobody would miss the enjoyment offered by the nightlife. There are no closing hours and it's impossible to feel bored. The Canary Islands, belonging to Spain, include 7 bigger and 6 smaller islands, taking up altogether 7,500 square kilometers of the Atlantic Ocean. Due to their favorable location, the islands have always been important stations in shipping traffic between Africa, Europe, and America. The biggest island is Tenerife. Santa Cruz and Las Palmas on Gran Canaria share the status of the capital city. On the biggest square of Santa Cruz, the Plaza De Espana, a group of statues commemorates the victims and heroes of the Spanish Civil War. The monument is guarded by unclothed colossuses, leaning against their swords. This is the center of the city, and nearby the Iglesia de la Concepcion can be found, along with the Perez Galdós Theatre with its great acoustics. Candelaria is a well-known pilgrimage place. This is where the small wooden statue of the Virgin of Candelaria, the patron saint of the island, was washed ashore. To commemorate this event, a Dominican monastery was established. This is the place where a monumental cathedral was built in 1958 with its characteristic belfry. The beaches of the Canary Islands are mostly covered by volcanic sand. Although at many places the water deepens fast and the waves are huge, we can also find protected shallow beaches where bathing offers a lot of pleasure. The Playa De Las Americas did not get its name by coincidence. The luxury resort evokes the atmosphere of Florida and California. The diversity of architectural styles is very impressive. The astounding mosaics of the shopping mall reflect the influence of Gaudi. The stage scene-like buildings offer an endless number of spectacles and tourist programs. Such a program is the hot air balloon, sent up every 15 minutes, from which we can overlook the entire city. Just like Las Vegas, where the blooming city rose from the desert, Tenerife, otherwise suffering from lack of water, is also proud of its pools, water jets, fountains, and others that ornament the city. The 3,718-meter-high Pico del Teide is the highest mountain in all Spain, not only Tenerife. Its snow-capped hill rising above the tropical landscape is an astonishing spectacle. In fair weather, we can travel to the top of the mountain in the 33-person cabins of the cable railway. Puerto de la Cruz, the port that was established in 1648 for transportation of wine, is now the third biggest city of the island. It's one of the most popular resorts of Spain. Its little white church is photographed by all visitors. The small fortress on the coast was built of solid rock. From here, there's a beautiful view of the black sand beaches. Because of the rocky beach and the strong waves, it's not very comfortable for swimming. Those who have experienced this go to swim in the Lago Martinez pool area, designed by Manrique, and leave the ocean to surfers and fishers. The Loro Park is the most intimate zoo of the Canary Islands. Large sums of money were invested in its development and marketing. This place is about much more than presenting 230 kinds of parrot. In the 5-hectare jungle-like area, we can also see gorillas, tigers, penguins and dolphins. Close to Los Gigantes, the giant cliffs threateningly rise above the holiday houses built on the gentle slopes. Gran Canaria, opposite to what its name might suggest, isn't the biggest of the islands. However, when the name was given, it was the biggest island of those that had been conquered. Its capital, Las Palmas, is the biggest city of the islands, with its population of 400,000. The old town is situated to the north of the Guinigata River. This is the commercial district of Las Palmas. The most remarkable building of the old town is the Casa de Colon, or the Columbus House. Columbus spent 4 weeks here as the guest of the Spanish governor of the island, Pedro de Vega, when a ship of his fleet, the Pinta, was damaged and had to be repaired in the port of Las Palmas. The biggest ecclesiastical building of Las Palmas is the St. Anna's Cathedral. The so-called Canary Village was built in the Dormas Park. It was built by the plans of Nestor de la Torre. This group of buildings, arranged like an outdoor museum, intends to exhibit the interesting and unique features of the architecture of the islands. Steep serpentine roads with hairpin bends lead up to the 2,000-meter-high mountains of the island. We pass small mountain villages as we go, and soon we can see the monolithic block balancing above the abyss, the Roque Nublo. The protected bay of Puerto Rico is the training camp of the Spanish sailing team. It's the home of amateur and more experienced surfers and sailors. It's a real center for water sports, fishers and divers, with a large port for yachts and 400 meters of man-made sand beach. The barren and steep hillsides are almost completely hidden behind the array of terraced hotels and apartments. These hotels don't have their own swimming pools. Guests can use the facilities of a large water park that was built among the buildings. Here we can find a giant slide, pool bar, adventure pool, and bubble bath also. Maspalomas and Playa del Inglés have practically been united by expansion. This resort is the center of tourism and beach life of the island. In the direction of Pocito Blanco, we can find the old lighthouse, which gives its name to the nearby hotel and shopping center. This is where we can find the most entertainment and sports facilities. There's a slide park and amusement park, sports courts, gaming rooms, hotels, and shopping streets. There's a walkway starting from San Agustina that follows the 6-kilometer gravel beach of the Playa del Inglés and smoothly merges with the sand dunes of Maspalomas. The most unique natural formation of Gran Canaria is the 4.5 square kilometer desert.
¿Quién me puede asegurar que esto no es verdad? Yo no gano nada por mentir. Yo la he visto desnuda en el mar. Tiene una sonrisa que brilla en el agua.
Fuerteventura is the second biggest of the Canary Islands. However, it's the most underpopulated. The volcanic eruptions, the sand that traveled here from the Sahara, and the dry weather of the 19th century ruined the economy of the island. The recovery was brought by the tourists 100 years later, who visit the island for its quietness, tranquility, and untouched nature. The cool wind of Gota Fria often blows along the coast of Fuerteventura. This and the waves whipped by the wind attract the surfers to this place. The divers are allured by the rich undersea world, while the inner part of the islands is appealing for bicycle riders and hikers. Sun lovers can find long sandy beaches and romantic rocky bays on the south coast. 300 volcanic cones rise on the 800 square kilometer island of Lanzarote. On its surface, plants are scarce. The ground is covered by solidified lava and volcanic sand. One spectacle of Lanzarote is the National Park of Timafaya. A lava field was created following an eruption in 1736. Looking from here, we may feel a thrill as we see the erupting geysers and volcanic fire flaming in the caves of the rock. The restaurant Diablo, designed by Manrique, is a unique experience where, by using the still active energy, the meal is prepared on lava stones. The lookout tower of Mirador del Rio, which is 497 meters high and stands in the northeast part of the island, was also designed by Manrique. Let's have one more glance at these islands, bathing in eternal sunshine. They're so diverse and delight us with a variety of such landscapes that they give the impression of being separate little continents.